So I'll finish the circle of introductions. So Brent Miller, I've known Alan for several years, and I've worked with Carl and Nick for several years, and I've known Mike maybe for a year or two. I kind of got plugged in with a refresh just because I saw it on Meetup. I wanted to come. I think the first thing that we did was you were saying how to pitch designs. I think that was the thing we did about a year ago.
Okay.
So that was fun, and then I just started coming after that. So yeah, UX, UI design. I was a web designer at Tallahassee Community College for a couple of years. I left there to get a degree in computer science. I wanted to get more into programming. So now I've kind of bridged that gap. I do UI, UX design, and then I code Angular applications here at Syntec. But I've touched React a little bit, and then I used to do jQuery back in the day. I haven't looked at it in a while. So front-end development and designers is kind of my wheelhouse. So very excited to get into this. One or two of you mentioned you were looking for a lightweight prototyping tool, and this is perfect. This is not going to be good if you want to do like server, like if you want to stand up a web server, if you want to do a bunch of database work and things like that, it's not good for that. But if you just want to put together some HTML, CSS, and make some things happen like you see on this screen, I think it's a great tool. So I'm excited. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. I like it. I like getting to do all of this and putting this together. So just one or two housekeeping things before we jump in. Bathrooms. Bathrooms are right out this door. You can get up. You're not going to offend me if you want to go to the bathroom. It's right out this door to the right. Bathrooms are on the left right there. It's about 5 feet down. So again, use that as often as you want. You're not going to bother me. You can interrupt me with questions all you want to. That doesn't bother me. I know when I'm sitting like in an environment like this and I want to ask a question and he keeps talking and he keeps talking. There's no opportunity to ask a question. So interrupt me. Mid-sentence doesn't matter. Just shout it out. It's not going to bother me. I want to make sure you're getting what you want out of it. So I'm going to very briefly cover our outline of what I'm going to go through. And then we'll sort of get started. I'm going to try and do this for about 45 minutes. I'll keep my eye on the clock. I may cut a little bit to make sure I'm not droning on too long. So we're going to very briefly introduce a pen. The CodePen is like the centerpiece of the entire thing. I'm going to do a 1-minute intro of a pen and what a pen looks like. And then we're going to look at 7 broad uses for CodePen. This is not how to use CodePen. It's what you can get out of it, what you as a designer or developer can get out of using the tool. We're going to cover building blocks. There are 4 main components to CodePen. I'll talk about that for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then finally, we'll cover making a pen, and that's the editor. So this is how you make a pen, how you edit code in it, how the code runs, how it shows up in your browser. And then we'll end with, I think, a show and tell. So I don't know if anyone has pens that they want to show off. But if you want to, I'm happy to hand this over to whoever wants to show a pen they've worked on, or maybe just a favorite pen that you like. It doesn't have to be one that you've made, but just something you want to talk about. I think that'd be fun. And then we might do a tour. I don't know if you all want to do a tour of the building, but I'm going to be here for as long as people want to be here. If you want to tour the building, we can do that. 10 minutes or whatever. So in case you want to follow along, I know no one really brought a laptop. There's 2 people, but just in case, I wanted to show that I wrote a blog. Yes, sir. Jason. Okay, so yes. In case you want to follow along, or you can read this later if you want to, I went through and made a blog post. I like learning about the platform. You can blog on CodePen. So I decided, well, I'm going to write a blog post. So I wrote things you can do with CodePen. It is pretty much everything you're going to hear me talk about tonight. So if I'm boring, you start tuning me out, that's fine. You can just read this later. I won't be offended. So there's that. I'll explain blogging a little bit later, probably not too much in depth. But anyway, this probably takes about 6 or 7 minutes to read all the way through. It's got pictures, in case you're a picture person. So anyway, that's the outline I'm following. I can send this out like an email or something if we want to, and you can reference this later.
Brent will help to go to CodePen.io to actually follow along and do stuff.
Sure, yeah.
So how do we find you?
So yeah,
He's right there.
okay. I'm right there. See, that's my picture. No, I have a CodePen profile. So to the left is CodePen.io/Brent Miller, and let me just go there now. You get. I'll just let me dive in. Let me show you the profile. So let's see. Here's my profile. So this is the standard background. You get a username. You can put on links. So I have a LinkedIn, I have a Twitter, I have an online portfolio. So if you come to CodePen.io/forward Brent Miller, then you get these three things. And if you're a pro member, you get to edit this. If you want to have, I've seen crazy profiles. People have like dancing pixel games inside their CodePen profile header. Looks really cool. If you're a pro member, you get to edit this. So you can do HTML, CSS all you want to. But if you're not a pro member, you pretty much get something like this. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I tweet about design once in a while. Like I said, anyway, yeah, so there you go. So I want to do a 1-minute overview of a pen. And let's see. Oh, that's right. I'm going to get rid of the console. OK, perfect. So this is a 1-minute overview of a pen. I want you to understand what a pen is, and then we'll just sort of jump right in. So basic gist, this is the core of CodePen. On the left, you see you get 3 file editors. You get HTML, you get CSS, and you get JavaScript. We'll dive into that more later. The idea is this is a live loader of what you have written on the left. So you write HTML, CSS, JavaScript, it automatically updates, and then it does whatever you want it to do. There are people who make pretty graphics. There are people who do console applications in JavaScript. There are people who document bugs in open source libraries. We'll get into all that. But this is the basic gist. The core, this is what CodePen is all about. You can share this. You see you've got an URL up at the top. You can just cut and paste that, mail it. So that's the very basic core of what CodePen is all about. Now, what I'm going to do now for about 20 minutes is talk to you about things that you can get out of CodePen. We'll get into the editor in a minute, but there's a lot of really good professional fun uses you can get out of CodePen, and so I want to talk about that for a little bit. So here's let's start with number 1. You can learn web design and development. So one habit that I like to do with CodePen is I'll just browse around to find a pen that I think is cool, right? Like I found this. This looks awesome. I would love to do something like this. So what I'll do is I'll find something like this and I say, okay, so what do I think is cool about this? I like the fact that it spins. It's got animation. It's got great colors. I love green. Green's my favorite color, as you can tell. So I want to know how to do this. So I recommend going on the site, finding a pen you love, and then diving into the code and ask yourself, how did they do this cool thing? And don't stop looking at the code until you know how to do it, right? You can make this a habit, right? So I've done that a couple of times. I've picked up CSS animation just by watching this. And then there's all kinds of stuff. There's someone for Christmas did like an animated snowman where they just used SVG to draw snow people, and there was snow dancing all around the screen. And I said, well, how do they do the snow thing? So I went through and read about the snow animation, and I learned how to do that. I thought that was great. So yeah, learning is great. And this is good for doing that. I'll show you one example. So I kind of like radial gradient backgrounds where you have a core color in the middle, it kind of gets darker towards the edges, and I want to know how this person did this, right? So I read through this code and I find out, well, there's this background property on the body element. If you don't understand HTML, it's cool. Just kind of go along for a minute. So they have this background property, and then the value is radial gradient, which is a cool little CSS thing. So if I want to change the background, I can go in and I'm going to put in a different color, and then bam, I just changed the color. Pretty simple, right? But that's kind of how CodePen works. So I figured out how I could change the color just by going through this code, and now I understand a little bit more about how to do these kind of backgrounds. So I like learning about it, and this is a good way to do that. So let's talk about searching for a problem. Someone name a design problem you've been grappling with recently, or like a front-end development problem, just like a topic, right? What's something you're struggling with?
Anytime I need to center a div.
Center a div, great. Okay, so the cool thing about CodePen, this is a cool thing you can get out of it. You've got, yeah, it's fine. It's saying I've changed it. There we go. Okay, so search, and you can search for a bunch of different things. Most people will tag their pens, they tag their collections and posts. Hopefully they're using good keywords, but center a div. Let's see what pens we can find with center a div. And I'm going to search on pens. Then, come on, search is, I have not encountered this. So apparently there's a lot. What about posts? Sometimes people will write post tutorials. So maybe, there we go. Responsive animations made easier with GSAP. How to center a div horizontally and vertically. So this is a blog post someone wrote on the platform. It looks like they started off and went there. So this is great. You have a problem, go to CodePen. All of the content on here is going to be pretty much about web design development. So if you have a problem, this is the Google for designers, I think. And then I've never seen the pen search crash. That was weird. But oftentimes you'll be able to find examples, right? So you search a pen, you get the example, and you can look at it. So that's a great way to use CodePen. You have a problem, go and search it. I think that's fun. Another thing to do is just go for inspiration, right? That's kind of I want to look at something cool. I don't know what I want to do today, but I want to be inspired, right? So there's a bunch of ways you can do this. There's TV, there's the Spark magazine. Let's look at TV first. So if I do CodePen.io TV, this link isn't on the front page. I don't know why they didn't feature this feature on the front page, so you have to know to click on TV or add it there. But so this is fun. So this is basically a TV channel. It's going to roll through about every 5 seconds. It shows you random pens that the staff thought was cool, right? So this is a little animation. This runs for about 10 seconds. Switches to another one. So you can just kind of watch this for as much as you want to. And then if you're interested, you can click the link down here. It will take you to that pen. So, right, the learning technique, find something cool, learn how to do it. I just got right here. Now I can read through all the HTML and CSS I want to figure out how to do that. So the TV does that. That's just if you just want to do something random. I think that's fun. There's also Spark. The Spark link is on the front page. So let's see. And Spark. So Spark is over here on the left. Spark is essentially a weekly roundup of the staff's favorite stuff based on a topic. So for some reason they thought shaders, they love alliterations, by the way. They always pick a letter and then like do 3 words from that letter. Shape, spreadsheets, and Simpsons. So if you just want to browse what was cool on CodePen this week, you can do this. This is also in an email. If you want to sign up for CodePen Spark, they'll send this to you once a week in the email. So I think this is cool. That's another way to search. You can also just go back to the home page. The home page is more updated. I think they update it like every 4 hours, but they'll pick out like a set of the best pens. So you see those, that's random inspiration. They also do the same thing for projects. Projects are a bit more robust. We'll talk about those a bit later, but they do that. Blog posts, same thing. And then collections, and we'll talk about collections in a minute. So this is another way just to get inspired, right? Just go to the home page, look down it. Questions so far? Okay. So who maintains open source software here? Does anyone do like GitHub projects or, okay, 1, 2, okay, 3, all right. So real quick, I won't spend too much time on it since there's only a couple of us. Easy way to document bugs for open source projects, right? You found a bug, you want to duplicate it. You can do a pen that does that exact thing. So for instance, there's a JavaScript library, Reactive. This person, Trevor, found a bug in Reactive, and he wants to prove to the project's maintainers, your stuff is broken. And here's how I can prove your stuff is broken. The idea here is there's data template binding. So when I change that number, that X is 7 is supposed to change. But if I hit the delete key, 7 does not change. So they've proven using a very reduced test case, right, that there's a bug with Reactive. And so they can cut and paste this pen, put it in your bug ticket on the library, and then you've kind of proven, hey, your stuff's broken, here's your proof. So anyway.
Maybe use it to ask a question on Stack Overflow.
Sure, yeah, if you would say, how do I do this thing? I've tried these 3 methods and they don't work. Here's my examples of how I tried these things and they don't work. You can embed a CodePen anywhere. So Stack Overflow would be good, yeah. Okay, so social, we all know what social media is, right? If you're working, you can share this with a colleague, you can email it, share it on Twitter, whatever you want to do. That's pretty straightforward. Portfolios. I noticed we had a couple of visually creative people here. I know Jason probably has a portfolio. You probably have a portfolio. I have a portfolio. If you're a creative, if you're a designer, you kind of have to have one. For me, I'm impressed when a developer can write their own portfolio in CSS and HTML, because you're proving right up front that you know how to make a website or a portfolio yourself. So CodePen can let you do that. And let me show you an example. This is a gentleman who made his online portfolio as a CodePen project. And it's pretty straightforward. It's got a clean design, but the basic idea is he's made pens to demonstrate all the different things he likes to do. Each of these is a link to a CodePen pen. Same thing down here. He also does graphic design, so he's made a little carousel you can scroll through. All of this is hand-coded HTML, CSS, and it's all in a CodePen. And he's launched it for people to see. So if you're an employer, you can look at this, hey, you're not using like our Adobe portfolio or something, you've written it yourself, which I think is pretty cool. So that's another thing you can do with CodePen. One last thing, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail, is you can look for jobs. Like a lot of sites these days, CodePen has a jobs board. So in case you're looking for it, there's a link on the left, and you can post job. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. These are just a series of links, but they're all about web design and front-end development. So if you're in the market for that, this is a national thing. But anyway, in case you want to look for jobs, they're here. So that, in a nutshell, was, we're doing really good on time, which is awesome. So we're going to go over the building blocks of CodePen. There are 4 key things you can make on CodePen, right? They're post pens, projects, and collections. And I'm going to go over each one. We're going to get a little bit more of how to do these things. And we'll kind of go over those. So let's look back at our demo that we have here. So this is the CodePen editor. All right, I'll get into the editing controls a little bit later, but I did want to show that you can look at CodePens 3 different ways. So this is what we call the default view, or the pen view. It shows you your code and the result. That's one way of looking at it. There's another way of looking at it, which is our details view. So I went up to here to change view, went down to details. You can click on a details view. This is going to put your result a little bit more front and center, and it's going to show you some social information about your pen. So here you can see how many people have seen it. You can pick a license if you want to use a certain open source license or whatever. You've got some metadata over here. People can comment. This one's kind of empty at the moment, but you know, I've seen with pens with lots of comments, lots of feedback. People fork it a lot. So that's the details view. That's how you get to that. You also have the full page view. This is like a presentation view. This is what the gentleman with his portfolio, no code, no overhead, very little controls. It just puts your results front and center. So that's the thing. And then I haven't played around with presentation mode. You get it if you have a pro account. Free users don't get this, so I didn't really dive into it very much. So I'm not sure what that does. Sure? Sure. Looks like you can change the view, maybe? Okay, there we go. You can shrink it way down for some reason. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, or if you're using like some kind of monitor that's very low resolution or something like that. Sometimes monitors in classrooms can suck. So if you have a low resolution monitor, maybe, you know. Anyway, I'm not completely familiar. So let's go back. Okay. Limitations. There are limitations to pen. Notice right off the bat you get 3 files, right? If you want 2 HTML files, you're kind of out of luck. If you wanted to nest together a couple of different files to have them stack on each other, or like have, you know, cascading sort of JavaScript environments or whatever, you can't really do that here. Also, this starts to bag down if you have a bit more than 10,000 lines of code. So if you have lots of code, they actually disable the save button if you have a megabyte. If you have a megabyte of raw code in your pen, they won't let you save it anymore. So this is not designed for robust projects. This is designed for prototyping kind of things. So, but you will start to see this bog down and get sluggish and everything if you put in lots and lots of code. And so great, that's the pen. Let's look at a project. So this is another type of thing you can make with code. Projects are much more like, almost like an IDE. For those of you who've done some coding, like integrated development environment, you can have a bunch of different files. The files could link together. You can build your code and deploy it on a very lightweight web server here if you want to do that. It's not going to have any kind of, you know, backend to it, but you basically, this is much more for you know, sort of serious development. You're beyond the prototyping stage. You really want to get into more robust kind of things. This one is a very simple project. He's written a couple different files here that when you highlight something, you can just auto-tweet it. I highlight code, tweet it, and now it logs into your Twitter and posts it, right? Probably. Yeah. But you kind of see the difference, right? I can have many files here. I can pick, if I had multiple HTML, I can pick which one I want to use. It's letting me pick the Twitter SVG file if I want to, but if I had multiple entry points. I think if you wanted to use unit testing, if I wanted to run unit testing in a browser, I could have a presentation HTML file and then another HTML file that just executes the unit tests on my JavaScript components or something. You could probably swing that. So, Alan. Yes. The pens do that. I didn't mention it with the pen, but pen and projects, there's this export button down here. And so, yeah, download zip. It'll pack everything up and then let you download zip when this is ready. And then there was 1 or 2 extra options on the pen that are just sort of, different. But the gist is the same, yeah. So you can download this as often as you want to. So I want to quickly mention a few things you can do with the project you can't do with the pen. You can create a file directory. You see that there on the left. You can see the output of preprocessor files. So for example, if you like writing your CSS in SASS, it will list your compiled CSS in your file directory and you can inspect it. So you can see how your SASS code is compiled to CSS if you want to. You can write TypeScript in this or CoffeeScript in this, and so you can see your transpiled JavaScript output if you want to. It will show all that. Here, this gentleman is not using any kind of preprocessors. He's just using the basic HTML, CSS. But you would basically see the little preprocessed output right there in your file structure, right next to the source file. That's helpful if you're somehow getting some kind of error and you want to see if your JavaScript output is different from what your TypeScript input was, right? So I think that's fun. This can bundle and minimize your code. Some people can use this like as a production environment, right? So if you want to optimize your performance, this is when you're going to take all your code and all your different files and just bundle it all together. When you minimize that, you take it all your white space, you get some performance boost. So your code runs a little faster, it's quicker to load in a browser. I'm not going to get into the technical specifics there, but bundling and minimizing is built in when you deploy a project on this. And then you can produce a production version that takes off the CodePen user interface, right? So say you wanted to get rid of all the Chrome of CodePen and get rid of it and just deploy it off of the CodePen server, there's an option where you can just take all of the controls off and it's just your presentation, which is cool. Clearly, this is much more complicated than a pen. So I recommend only using a project if you really think you need it. If you're just going to do some prototyping, you just want to show off an animation, this is probably way, way overkill. So just do a pen and it's much easier to set up and configure. I mentioned posts. So you already saw the post I put together. I'll just have 1 or 2 quick things. I think we all know what a blog is, right? WordPress is much more polished than this. So if you're really serious into blogging, you want some custom navigation on the left side of your post or something, something like WordPress is going to do you better there. CodePen, you can embed pens, you can write a little bit of CSS, but really it's just a straight up single post blog editor. Not a whole lot of polished functionality there. The pro, though, of blogging on CodePen is the community. When I wrote my things you can do with CodePen, the staff liked it, they upvoted it, and I got like 600 views just because the staff liked it, which is cool if you're blogging about web design or prototyping. That's your audience, right? So you sort of got a built-in audience that's interested in that, whereas if you did like WordPress or Medium or something, you're going to have to find how you're going to promote that. So anyway, I think that's a pro. Collections. This is the last of our 4 building blocks. We did pens, projects, posts. I want to talk about collections, and then we'll dive into some real nuts and bolts. So let me show The Simpsons. You remember how they had they did the Simpsons was part of our Spark for the week. This person put together Simpsons art using just HTML and CSS. I like HTML and CSS art because you can take Adobe Illustrator, right, and draw out a graphic and export it as an SVG. You used a graphic design program to do that. Wonderful. Isn't it like cooler just to use CSS? Like you didn't do this in a web design or like a graphic design tool. You literally had to code this from scratch, like just using your brain. You didn't get any like drawing stuff. So anyway, this is a collection. Very basic. You group together stuff that seems related to you. You can make as many collections as you want to. You can share them. You can just leave them posted. You can. One thing I recommend, where you want to center a div, right? Wouldn't it be cool if you go through and found a bunch of pens that did that, that showed it off, and they made a collection, pens that center a div, and then you could share that around or write a tutorial around it, and then boom, you've got pens that are all on the same topic, right? So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was checking
Question.
around yesterday, and Homer Simpson is made completely with circles.
Oh, the middle one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, you click on it.
Even the hair doesn't seem very circle-ish.
I forget. There's a way.
Click his
that-
face and see.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's something
Okay.
probably do art.
Masking
Yeah.
the circles.
That is probably some massive clip masking or
Yeah, there's a lot.
compound shaping
I think I like that circle.
in solid. Okay, they're translating a bit. Overflow. Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah. Well, okay. All right. Well, anyway, I could spend an hour trying to figure out how they did this.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's what happens
but-
when you hover over is you
Okay.
overflows visible.
I see. Okay. So this is probably the hair. This over here, this guy right there is probably the hair, and they trimmed it down. Okay. Huh. Okay. Huh. All right. Anyway. So you get the gist. Collection, right? It can be utility, it can be fun, however you want it.
Pull back the curtain.
Right. Okay. So we wanted to get into CodePen editors a bit. So I want to show you how to fork a pen and what that does to the original fork and the original pen and your fork of it. We'll create a pen from scratch, and then I'll sort of go over how to set up a pen. I wasn't planning on doing a lot of live coding. I've sat in way too many demos where people live code and they just sit there for half an hour debugging their own code before they can show it. I don't want to look like an idiot, so no live coding from Brent today. If one of you would like to come up so we can laugh at you, I'm just going to show you what you can do with it, and then we'll kind of move on. So let's see. We'll go back to our. Let's see if I can go back to my Green Mountains. Here we go. Perfect. So what I want to do is talk about how much time forking can save you. Clearly, someone put a lot of time and effort into this, right? This is probably not something you can do in 5 minutes. If you want to take this concept and kind of do something different with it, maybe you want to use hills instead of sharp mountains or something. You don't have to write all this yourself. You don't even have to cut and paste. You can just fork. So those of us familiar with Git, we've heard of already, a fork is where you basically take a source code, right, and you make a copy of it. And then from there, changes you make don't affect the original anymore. You've got your own thing of it, right? And it's a way to sort of make a copy of something, and then you don't have to worry about corrupting the original code. Forking works exactly the same way. So Gabriella Johnson is our author of this thing. When I click the fork button up here, it's going to reload really quickly. Looks like nothing's changed, but you notice now this is a pen by Brent Miller, right? So now I have my own copy of it. I can change anything I want to. I can completely screw it up. And Gabriella's code is untouched, and I can't do anything to hers. Here's the cool thing about forking, though, on CodePen. I'm a big anti-plagiarism guy. Maybe it's because my wife's a college professor, so I've had that drilled into me at home. I don't like plagiarism, especially in the open source community. People are putting stuff out there for free. You're not helping them by just cut and pasting the code and not giving them credit. So anyway, here's the cool thing. We had this details view, right? So I go back to Gabriella's pen now, and if I go to the details view, CodePen, let me scroll. CodePen is going to keep a log of who forked it. And see, there I am right there. So the cool thing here is she gets credit when people fork her pen. You can cut and paste if you want to. That's kind of sleazy. I prefer to do a forking. That way the original author gets credit, helps promote her. It's just nice. Anyway, so that's forking. I mean, that's it. That's how easy it is. You can delete your fork if you want to. The original's still going to be there. You can fork it like 8 times and do 8 different changes. They don't care, right?
Uploading the CodePen, they're sharing it, and you're free to use it, right?
Yes. So you can choose what license you want to. If you make a public pen, they only give you open source-ish licenses like the MIT license or something. You can have private pens. I think it's a pro feature. I didn't really explore it. So the intention, if you want to have your own proprietary code, just pay the fee and make your pen private. No one can see it unless you share it with someone. The gist is if you put up a public pen, it's open source, people can use it. Yes, Carl?
How's the community for feedback and help on things that you're trying to do?
If your pen or post sort of gets upvoted, you can get some feedback pretty quickly. If your pen's popular, I've seen posts that have been up for like a day and they get picked by the community, they make it into CodePen Spark. They'll have like 300 likes, 16,000 views. They get a lot of feedback. If you just make a pen, there's like tens of thousands of pen on this site. If you don't have your own promotions like social media or something and your pen doesn't get picked, you know, you just might not get any feedback at all, unless someone just happens to randomly search and stumble across it. So I'd say if you get upvoted, you'll get some pretty good feedback from people. But yeah.
You also got the forum and go through and see how to do this.
Right, right. That's true. Yeah. Ma'am, did you have a question?
I always thought that I saw a blog or an article somewhere that they were starting to offer private pens on a free account. And I'm
Maybe.
just trying to find it, but I can't.
Um,
But that's the only reason I went to Pro.
okay.
Because I didn't want people just seeing my junk.
Right. Sure.
And, but then I've been thinking, well, I need to confirm that. Downgrade.
To comment on that, I highly recommend CodePen's documentation.
Yeah.
Privacy appears to be a pro feature. By default, are public. Yeah, so by default, all the content you create is public. And then, yeah, pro members can create private everything. So I do think, I mean, and maybe there's like an announcement where they're going to change it. But yeah.
How much is pro?
So the very basic package where you just get some of your own private stuff, you really can't do like domain aliasing or some of the fancier like web production stuff. I think that was $8 a month. I signed up for a developer package because I get to plug in a custom domain. So if I want to put my portfolio online, I can plug in brentam.me into my CodePen portfolio and it syncs, right? And then you also can deploy a production project without any of the Chrome around it. And I think you can do that with the developer package. You also get more, like there's a cap on how many private things you can do. And if you pay like the more expensive thing, you can go up to like 200 private pens or something crazy like that.
Did you move your own domain name here? Or
Not yet.
How does that?
There's documents for that. Let's see. I know I was reading about that earlier. Here we go. So under the documentation, they have this project section, HTTPS and custom domains. I am not a back-end web programmer. I don't understand web servers very well. I just do the graphic stuff. So I'm not going to be able to explain this, but they did put together an article on how to sync together custom domains. It looks like you go through, I've seen this kind of stuff before. You have to take your IP address right, and you have to do some kind of connections there. Not an expert, but it looks like they got documentation on how to do that.
There's my domain is abc.com.
Sure, yeah.
And then I went to CodePen.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, they go to abc.com. I don't know if it auto redirects or it serves as like a domain alias. I don't know. I didn't do that yet. So
By what it's looking at right here, this is a DNS interface. So what they're going to be doing is probably publishing that through the CodePen, through the CodePen.io. I don't know. What do I see up there?
Some guy's site.
Right. I'm guessing it's just a straight up DNS instead of going like to a subdomain to CodePen.io. So that's good. So you don't have to go worry about a subdomain. But yeah, that'll manage all of it for you.
anything else?
And that's with the $8 a month pro or some other pro?
I think it's with the 12. So there's like a starter and then like a developer and then like a super. The developer is $12 a month, and I think the custom domains come with developer, the middle tier. I think it's like $14 a month, but if you pay the annual thing, it comes down to about $12 a month. Okay, so we forked. Forking was super simple. I mean, I really just kind of showed the gist of it. There's not much more complicated going on than that. So we can also do a pen from scratch. That's pretty easy. So basically all you do is when you're logged in, you go to create, and then you can create whatever you want. If you plan on making a bunch of pens using the same sort of rough outline or the same starter code, you can make a template. I don't have any templates, so when I click on this, it says you don't have any. You have to make your own. But if you plan on doing like a series of pens from the same starter chunk of code, then you can do a template. But otherwise, when you start a new pen, it just shows up white screen and then nothing over here. And that's basically it. You have to go in, you have to update the title, and then it'll start saving. I don't know if it saves untitled pens. The first thing I always do is just change the title and save it. I've never taken the risk of not changing the title and save it, so I'm not exactly sure how that works. But in any case, that's really what creating a new pen is. It's just 2 clicks and then you're sort of off and running. I recommend forking if you have any kind of like starting point at all. I don't like wasting my time. I would really only do this if I just wanted to completely start from scratch and I had nothing to work from. That's just me. Okay, so now that we're here, I want to go into a little bit more details of how to configure the editor. And I'm not going to use this because existing pens that have already been saved have more features. So I'm going to come back to our editor view on this pen here. So I'm going to kind of go, well, let's start with the view. You don't always have to have your code on the left. You may have seen that in some other views you can move it around. That's pretty simple. You just click change view and you've got editor layouts. If you want on the right, top, you know, pretty simple. I think it saves it when you save your pen. It will save your configuration. So over here you can do more configuration of how code makes it into your pen and how you can manipulate it. So you click any of the cogs and you've got this pen settings modal that comes up. I don't use HTML preprocessor a lot except for something like Markdown. So if you want to write in a templating language besides HTML, you can pick from a set. I've not used HAML or Slam or Pug, but I have used Markdown. It's very commonly used in just straight up documentation. If you want to write a document, the CodePen blogger uses Markdown by default. So what you do if you pick this, I might just completely screw this up. We'll see if I destroy anything. Okay, no, I did it. So I close this and now it says it's Markdown. I don't want to, I'll probably break it if I try to do much else with it because this is not Markdown, this is regular HTML. I think what will happen though is it will take your Markdown and compile it to HTML, right? That's kind of how Markdown works. So you can do that with all the different languages that you get. There's a head, so if like you want to load scripts, there's a tool for putting scripts in here, but you can manually change your head here if you want to. That's kind of technical. CSS preprocessors, I noticed things like less CSS, SASS, stylus, etc. So if you want to use SASS, I like SASS, I'm a SASS person, you can choose that. If you want to use CSS rules that don't work in all your browsers and you think you need to do like a little trick called prefixing to have your certain CSS properties work in a stupid browser like Internet Explorer, it'll do that automatically for you, which I think is pretty cool. You can include libraries. So if you want to include Bootstrap, Foundation, I don't know if Material Design has a standalone CSS library, but that's pretty cool. You can just sort of pick them out here and it'll add them for you. And then those CSS rules are available for you. You don't have to manually add it to your head section. It pulls that in. JavaScript, we start to get into some similar things. Babel is cool if you want modern JavaScript to run in Internet Explorer. TypeScript, if you want to write Angular. These days, you're pretty much stuck writing TypeScript, so there's that. And then you've got CoffeeScript and LiveScript. The idea here is you just pick one, and it's just going to change the format over there. So let's see if I just pick TypeScript. And then over here, notice it's TypeScript. So I should be able to do something like, let Brent assign a type. I want Brent to be a string. Okay. And then Brent. So I see no red squigglies when I just assign my variable a static type. The magic of TypeScript. Now I didn't try this. What happens if I go back to JavaScript? I wonder if it's going to flag it as an error. If I go back to none. Okay. It didn't flag it. Huh. I wonder if I'll get a console error. Anyway, if you want to do TypeScript, you can do some Angular stuff or whatever you want TypeScript for. You can just switch that over. Okay, so JavaScript. So here's a cool thing. I think this is nifty. If you write one pen, say you write your own JavaScript library that does some logical stuff in one pen, and you want to reuse that same JavaScript logic in like 6 other pens, you can just say load JavaScript from a pen, and it will go and find the JavaScript from the pen and like preload it as like a library in your header section. So that means you can just write your JavaScript in one pen and then just automatically use it in 10 other pens. Right? I think that's pretty cool. So that's fun. You can do that. You can pull in other stuff. You can use jQuery. Angular 1, I think, is available from the internet, but Angular, like regular Angular today, you have to have like a build system, so you can't do that. But you see Vue and those other ones. So you can preload all your if you want to do React. I've done some React experimentation in here. I want to use React, and then boom, off and running your React components. So I think that's fun. The behavior stuff is more like just like setting your editor config, I guess. Space instead of tabs. Who here has gone into arguments about space instead of tabs? Silicon, yeah, that's a show. The show had a thing of this. Yes, I'm a space person. I like spaces. Are you all going to start throwing things at me? Yes? Oh, all right. You can fork all of my pens just to switch them to tabs if you want to. You have my permission. I won't get offended. And then auto updating preview. I code on the left. It instantly renders on the right. And so anyway, other options in there. The last thing I want to show, and then I'll just kind of open it up to whatever we want to talk about next. I do want to talk about Web Console. As a front-end developer, I love using the Web Console. Anytime someone says, "Hey, your stuff has a bug," I say, "Did you look at it in the Web Console? Are there exceptions? Does it have like big red error messages? Can you send those to me?" Those are awesome. It's a debugging tool. If you want, you can write JavaScript or TypeScript console applications. It's not going to show anything up here, so it just kind of seems like a waste of the real estate. But if you wanted to write a console JavaScript application, you can do it here if you want to. You get access to a web console, and then if you get errors in your code, it generates runtime exceptions. Typically, in an environment like this, it prints in your browser console, so you get access to that. You can read those, right? So that's error logging for bugs you might have in your code in a web browser. So anyway, that's the last useful tool. I didn't get into embedding. I haven't played around with it a whole lot. I'm not an expert on this yet, but you can embed your CodePen in a blog post. I know you can do that. You can put it anywhere on the web, like you can embed like a YouTube video or something. You can do the same thing here. I'm not familiar with all these options, but I think you can kind of like include certain like code, or you can just get rid of your code and show the result. There's different config things here. And then I think when you scroll down, this is almost like, like YouTube will give you, hey, here's the embed snippet for a YouTube video. CodePen does the same thing. You can customize stuff. So if you don't like its height or its width or something, you can drag this up or down to change. This will reflect how it embeds. So it's changing your embed code here as you move it up and down. You can always get down in the code and manipulate things. I like breaking things that way. It's just fun. So anyway, that's embedding. I think we covered exporting. So here you go. Someone asked how do I like export a pen? I'm not familiar with GitHub gist. I think they're like really light, like prototype deployment type things of a GitHub project. They've got a thing where you can do that here. You can export as a zip. There's an option for embedding it, etc. There's share. This is the standard stuff. You can text your pen. I'm not sure why someone would want to do that, but you can, yeah. You can only do it 1,000 times a month. So if you are like a power CodePen texter, you are out of luck.
Or like just a regular 3-person.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's one just included.
Yeah. All right. Have you used GitHub Gist? Have you? Are familiar? Oh, okay. All right. I'm not familiar with them, so it'd be cool if someone knew about them. Any of you guys know what GitHub Gists are and how to use them? No, I don't. Okay. That's it. I think we just covered, like I said, not doing live coding, but hearting. I mean, this is pretty simple. Hearting is when you like something. It's like a like on Facebook. Something gets enough hearts, it sort of upvotes, so it'll sort of scroll to the top of those feeds we saw, like with CodePen, Spark, etc. Pins. This is pretty simple. You pin something if you just want to come back to it later. So far, I'm a minimal pinner. I've only pinned 2 things I think are cool. But if I pin this, then it's just showing up in my pinned list. It's basically your favorites list. That's really all that is. Unpinning is easy. You can click the unpin or click the X. That's it. I think I'm done.
I think the Pro version, I think we can go ahead and see this in a browser. Like in a free version, we cannot do that.
See it in a browser? You mean like embed it somewhere? Or?
Yeah, I think you can go to and export it and see it in a browser.
Okay.
Like in the change view settings.
Change view settings. Oh, okay. Up here? Direct code links. Oh, you can directly link to your files. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm wondering what you could probably do is if you write a JavaScript library or a CSS library, you can just link to this file, like a content delivery type network, and then use it elsewhere. So it's almost like a file host too. That's fun.
So you're saying something that this can't do it in.
I think only the pro version does.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. I don't know if the free version can do that or not.
The direct code links, HTML,
Yeah.
CSS, and JS, they're there.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Questions, thoughts? Yes, sir.
You mentioned SASS. What is it? And why do you like it?
So writing a large amount of CSS can get really hairy really quickly. It's hard to keep it all straight, especially if you're doing this across multiple files or like large CSS code bases. So SASS is a superset of CSS you write in SASS. It transpiles to CSS, and it gives you some extra language benefits. Like instead of having to, like say I wanted to target, let me see if I can find something down here that looks kind of stupid. Let's just use this as a very simple example, but you'll sort of get the gist. Here, I can write SVG block just for CSS that impacts the SVG element. Then if I want to find a path in the SVG, you see what I had to do here? I had to write SVG, and I had to write path. That seems sort of cumbersome to me. If I were to go over to CSS, and I want to switch to SCSS, and I look over here, what I can do now, where was path? Okay, so I'll take this path thing, right? So I'm going to take out my path property, I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to nest it, right? So now what this is saying is shown, so this compiles down to the same thing that you just saw before, right? It'll compile to SVG path as a child selector, but here I don't have to like rewrite all that crap over and over again. If I want to nest things, I just nest them in my code, and it'll compile down to clean CSS that works. Yep, yep. That's just one example. There are mix-ins, so if you want to write like a CSS pattern and use it like 20 different places, you can pull in a mix-in, and it will dump a bunch of rules into your code block for you. That's helpful. There's math. If you wanted to do something more sophisticated in the basic CSS calc property, SASS has some math features built into that. There's just some other kinds of things. You can do if-else logic. If this, then insert these CSS rules. If not, insert these other rules. So you get a little bit of that. It's just these nice, almost programming-ish kind of language features. Yeah. If you're just doing quick prototyping, it's probably too much overhead. But if you, like I do enterprise development, I have like 90 different views in the enterprise application I write. So yeah, I got to manage my CSS or I'm going to just kill myself. So yeah, SASS does that. Anything else? Questions? Yes, sir. JavaScript, TypeScript, I learned Java and C and C++ in college, though I'm kind of rusty on those probably. Those are the programming languages. And then HTML, CSS, SASS. I think that's it. So Angular is a framework. You write in TypeScript. So TypeScript would be the language. You write Angular in TypeScript. In Angular 1, you could just use JavaScript if you want to. They're completely redid for Angular 2+. You really have to have a full-on build system now. You can't just hack together like an Angular web page. So you need TypeScript. You need to use like NPM or some kind of build system to build a production kind of thing. So yeah, much harder now. It does. I mean, I like it. I mean, when you have an enterprise code base, your UI is 10,000 lines of code. You want to make sure you can refactor it without just getting errors all over the place. Angular is good for that. Jason, did you have a question?
Yeah, I heard with JavaScript, they're starting to use it for VR and AR.
I have no idea. I wish I knew augmented reality because that's awesome, but I have no experience. Does anyone here use JavaScript for AR, VR? No?
I just read something like that in how VR and AR is going on and a lot of people JavaScript.
Sure. I see that. Yeah. Yeah, I think just generally a lot of mobile app development and web development are starting to converge. You can start to write web apps that behave like a mobile app, like with progressive web apps. And then with frameworks like a Cordova or Ionic, you can use HTML, CSS, JavaScript that will compile to a native installable app on your phone. So the two worlds are just starting to bleed into each other a bit. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, they were last night. We talked about the other group, JS Tally, and I think it was a joint event last night.
Mhm.
Kind of talking about how there's a lot of things are moving towards web apps, and you have a compelling reason to build a native app, like hardware integration or something. But that's the trend. Everything's moving towards the web. Everything's going to be a web app. Not everything, but
Sure.
like I said, unless you have a strong, compelling reason to make a native app.
Yeah.
Some people that were even struggling with, why would I ever build a Windows app?
Mm-hmm.
There's reasons.
Sure.
I'm sure you guys have Windows apps.
Yeah, like so one use case we have is if you want a live tile. So like imagine like if you use a business application and you want to be alerted when something in your business is going haywire.
Right.
So you can have a mobile app that pings you. You can have a Windows live tile. So when you pull up your Windows start bar, there's a live tile. Hey, your building's on fire. You know, something like that. So that'd be one case to do that. If you do any kind of a device component encoding, like we make what we call pro keys. They're basically a secure, authenticated type pin-oriented device. You encode those with a little encoder thing that has to be on Windows. So you would make a desktop app that just encodes pro keys and talks to your enterprise backend and connects that. So yeah.
Anywhere where you want to use hardware,
Yeah.
use it to do it.
There you go.
Do it native.
Yeah.
Because that was the other thing you were talking about, is that the reason you can't do that is because web apps are actually going the opposite way. They're trying to restrict what you can do because of all the nefarious reasons the hackers could get
Sure.
in. Usually they could, download or do anything through your web app, and now it's, especially Chrome and all the loading engines for web browsers have scaled that back as much as they can. So there's a lot fewer things you can do for security reasons.
Makes sense. Yeah, definitely. Yes, sir.
Can you then what is one or two distinct things from the concerning the UI and UX design? I know it's kind of run together.
Like what the difference is?
Yeah, but in a lot
Man, yeah. I think in our industry we come up with a lot of buzzwords that mean the same thing. So, I mean, to have a user experience, unless this is just going on in your head, there has to be an interface, right? So, I don't know, user experience maybe sounds like more like holistic. I mean, you can probably, I don't know if you make a big distinction. I don't. I think UI, UX. Most job ads you'll see, like I'll say UI, UX designer. That means they don't know what is this,
Yeah.
It's, to me, it's the same thing. Do you have
The
a...
only thing that I would add, I love that question. I love that topic. I love to read the articles because there's people super opinionated about, I'm UI because this, and I'm UX because of that. The only thing that stands out immediately to me, I sort of mentioned when you were talking at the beginning about my friend at Home Depot, is the research side of UX does seem distinct to me, though you can certainly do research with building an interface. But when I think of an interface, I think of it more as the interaction between the person using the tool or the device and the person who made the thing that's being used. And the screen is sort of a layer. That's the interface in my mind. And so all that happens related to making that moment happen. But the experience is broader. It has to do with research that brought the person to that device and what happens afterwards. So it's bigger, but there is a lot of overlap.
I like that answer. That's good. I guess I don't do a whole lot of user research myself. So to me, when I think of it, I don't think about how the research goes into that part. Yeah.
There's a LinkedIn group for, I guess, the user experience group, and they have a lot of really good discussions on there. It seems like
I saw a picture once that was like UI and it had a bowl of cereal and it's like the interface was the spoon, right? So that's UI design. It's like the spoon, and then UX was a flashback from the Mikey and the Life cereal commercial. It's like Mikey is just tearing into the cereal, so that's UX. Mikey's digging in, and UI is like, so I don't know.
I like it. I like that. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I like it. Yeah. Anything else? So we can do show and tell if you want to do that. Yeah.
Like you guys had some things that you had in mind that because you've done a little bit of looking around. I'll just sort of seed what maybe might spark some ideas for you guys. I love data visualizations, and I have tons to learn in that realm. And there's a JavaScript tool called Threejs, which I don't know at all, but I'm interested in learning it. Can you look up Threejs
Sure.
butterflies?
On CodePen? Sure. Yeah.
So I'm assuming what we're about to look at, someone loaded the Threejs library and then did this crazy magic to it. And you'll see the result, which just was so fun to watch. If it comes up.
This one?
Yeah, that's it. So Threejs library, and they make butterflies, and I'm assuming they respond to where your cursor is moving around on the screen. I don't know that for sure.
Oh, let's
But
play
it's
with
like
it. Sure.
mouse.
Sure.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
So maybe. So there's like a swarm physics effect happening there with the butterflies.
You can see in the upper right corner, you can turn move on or off and follow mouse on or off.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I just clicked it when it was off the screen. Okay. Ah. Okay. And then if I turn off follow mouse. Oh, yeah, you're right. There we go.
Anyway,
Huh.
that's just one crazy example. This was like a couple of days ago. I saw this, it blew my mind. And I'm nowhere near understanding how that works, but it just is fun to watch.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to learn more about coding physics with JavaScript. And I know there's physics libraries that make it easier and whatnot.
Yeah, so there are people who just straight up code games in CodePen, and they get into like physics engines and what happens when the ball hits the wall. And, yeah. Any other pens that you think are cool you want to show? Has anyone made pens they feel comfortable talking about, or like, do you want to? What are some of yours? You can come up here and draw it if you want.
I only have one. I do not see on here what I'm looking at here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that's going to be rough.
Oh, I think.
So here's okay.
All right.
That or yeah. Sorry,
So
I
I'm
forgot
gonna-
there was split screen.
Well, I got to get my glasses. All right. Now, so how did you do that? You're good. You're good. All right, that's not the right URL because I can't type my username correctly.
MYCOC.
It is not.
Here we go.
Okay, so what I did is a project that I was working on had a timeline. And so my team said, hey, look at this app called Timeliner, and it's awesome, and can we do something similar? Well, there's a much longer story to that, but there was one particular element in the UI of Timeliner that I thought was so cool. I was like, I gotta learn how they did that. And a lot of times when I build out web applications or mobile applications, I try to squeeze in actions into tiny, tiny spaces. And because otherwise the actions just get in the way and it's like visual bloat and you're like, hide all that stuff, get it out of the way. So this was, I wonder why it's not letting me, there it is, okay. So what happens here is it's gonna, when you hover the ellipse icon, it's gonna animate out the actions, and it's got a little bit of a wiggly animation thing happening on collapse, and I thought that was cool. And again, I'm just like looking at this Timeliner app thinking, how did they do that? How did they do that? So I just started playing around with the CSS to make it do what I wanted. And then the icons, and sometimes icons are clear enough, sometimes they're not. So I used a library called Tippy. And I think if I'll look at the settings in a second, I think I'm loading that external library. But I liked it better than the way that HTML does tooltips. This added a little bit more flair, and I thought that was nice. So there you go. There's my pen, my one pen.
I love the bounce.
Yeah.
I do love the bounce.
Down in the JS section.
So there it is.
If you just look on the left.
Oh, it doesn't do it over there too.
Yeah, just
Oh, that's
Oh, that's
That's
yeah.
just calling
After
it.
yeah, that's the way to talk to the library that I loaded, right? So there's that one.
So Brett, this is a inside question,
Uh-oh.
syntax thing, sorry. You and Adam did a new, what do I call it?
I don't
There
know.
are spinning gears or,
Oh yeah,
all of
yeah,
that.
page loader. Yeah.
Right, did you use CodePen to do prototyping on that?
So Adam did the design of the icon. So we basically we wanted a page spinner. It's a single page app. So when you navigate, it doesn't reload your web page. It will just reload parts of it. But you don't want the user interacting with the page as it's changing. So we just did it like a modal overlay with like a little spinner, just to say, hey, the page is loading. So Adam did all the graphics. He used Adobe Animate. Is that an Adobe thing? Yeah. He used Adobe Animate, so he took our corporate icon, that what I call the syntexicons there. He made them spin. He did like a little dance thing, and he just gave me. I think it was a GIF. I think that's all we did because it was only going to be one size. So I took a GIF and then I just made an Angular modal component, and you can't do Angular code. Modern Angular you can't do in CodePen. So I wasn't able to do CodePen with that. But if you gave me the GIF, we could maybe just put together a pen like this, and then maybe had some buttons to simulate page changes, right? Build in like an artificial delay. So I click this page, and then you could do the modal overlay prototype. Maybe it's on the page for a second, and then you can simulate page transition. So that's how I would do that. I wouldn't do it in Angular, right? But
Right.
React would work. I could do that in React if we want to. Yeah.
There's a great JavaScript library called Block UI, I think.
Block UI. I've heard of it.
And it kind of, you can actually set it up so it automates it. So if you have a spot app and you make any outside calls like Ajax calls, it'll automatically throw a loader up there for you, and then when it returns, it takes it away for you automatically.
Okay.
It's really
Awesome.
nice.
Yeah.
Super sweet.
Okay. Yeah.
If you had a backend on a different server, could you poke into your server from here? Like, hey, go get my abc.com/API/.
Yeah, I'm actually using it.
Yeah.
Like I'm calling.
From here.
Oh, from CodePen? I don't know. Probably.
If you
I
had
don't see
a
why not.
if you had a REST API, your JavaScript is JavaScript. So if you
This is just HTML. I think I actually went to the app timeliner and I used the developer tools and I viewed the source of their code, and that's where I got their font from and some of the other bits and pieces that they were doing.
well, you're not loading data from a server somewhere to populate data into. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if CodePen disables REST calls or not. So you would have a REST API. You have JavaScript. You could call a REST interface, get data back. If you want to do like a data, or you were talking about data visualizations, right? I don't know if you can consume REST API data, like getting data off of a server and then populating like a chart. CodePen may cut off that call that goes out. I don't know. It's feasible though. I mean, if they don't blow out the calls, you can write JavaScript here that talks to a REST API that would get data. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You can do that.
Okay.
I've done like some like pulling in like the weather.
Sure. Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Here we go. Any other show and tell?
I
Yes,
have
ma'am.
a question. This probably gonna sound too simple, because I've never done any kind of design work. I do databases without this kind of stuff. Why do you have to code in 3 languages to make that happen? Like what's the like HTML? What does that do to the screen? What is CSS doing? What is JS doing to the screen? Is it that clear at all, or this? Okay.
So I'd be interested in other answers. Here's one. The HTML is the semantics of the page, and so like when Google scrapes the web and populates its indexing, it's going to look at the way that the HTML is written. Like, it's very important that an H1 tag is an H1 tag because that's the most important element on the page, and so then H2 less important. So it's like the semantic meaning of the content is what HTML is about. And then the CSS is not semantic meaning. It's like, what's it going to look like? Colors and fonts and widths and heights. And the JavaScript is interactions. If I'm in any event, I'm going to click, I'm going to swipe, I'm going to wiggle, or whatever. It's all the interaction layer. So those 3 things work together to make what you're seeing.
It's really cool, yeah, but thank you for explaining that.
I like to describe it like a car. Like HTML is like a bucket of parts.
Right.
CSS is like putting it all together. That puts the paint on it. That puts everything looks pretty. And JavaScript is like the engine. That makes it move, makes it drive, makes it do everything you want it to do.
Cool.
And I like the analogy of a house, where the HTML is the frame of the house, the CSS is the paint and the finishes, and then the JavaScript is the behavior of the house. Do the toilets flush? You know, and stuff.
Cool, thank you very much. I like that.
The JavaScript gives you your outside data interfaces as well, right?
Yeah, if you like if you want to consume data from a server somewhere and it's not a traditional sort of round trip web page like ASP.NET or something like that, then yeah, your JavaScript would do data interaction from a server. Yeah.
Sorry, backing down.
Anything else? I think we're kind of ending right on time. It's 8:30, so okay.